welcome back to Just Code It. Today we're going to be combining different videos and creating the SQL model for a blog website. We're going to be basing most of this model off of our Pydantic model, which is right here for reference. We want to port this over to a SQL model. You just have to put some more relationships in, but this is a good reference. If you have this from last time, I would pull it up, and then we'll just get going. The first thing we're going to do, I'm going to start breaking this project up a bit more. Our project structure is going to be, it's actually just app. Then we're going to have our main, which we don't have yet because that's going to be our endpoints. Models is going to have our database models in it. That's what we're working on today. And the database is our database connection. And then main will have all of our routes in it. This is a description of our model that we're trying to create. I did create a UML diagram to illustrate it in a better way. These are the relationships we're going to try to map out in our code. So let's get down to it. Let's pull up this. We have our reference, and then let's get going on the database. From here, we're just creating our connection. That's basically all the database file is going to do, and do any database interactions that we need. To start, we're going to begin with the user model. The user model is almost the exact same, but it has two relationships that we do not have in this Pydantic model. It also does not have that model config, but all the other fields are the exact same. They're even defined very similar. The only thing I also changed is converted this to a field instead of having it without a default type. And this default type is given a lambda taking in that current date and time, a lambda function. But let's just start from the top. So the ID is a field. A lot like the Pydantic model, we have a field also in the SQL model. This is not the same. We're setting this as int ID as the data type, and we're setting it as our primary key, our identifier for this table. Then we have some simple ones: username, which is a string; email, which is using that Pydantic special data type; and then full name, which is a string; bio, which is an optional string with the default of with the none; created at, which is a data type of date time. It is set to a field with a lambda function that returns the date and time. We have updated. It is optional, but set to none to begin. Then active is set to true. Now we're getting these warnings because we haven't created these classes yet, but those are going to be two other tables that we're creating. These are the relationships that they're drawing between them. But hold in your brain, because let's just get some of these out, then it will be a lot easier to understand what is going on. The post class is going to inherit from the SQL model. It's going to be a table. So I forgot to mention that these are both going to be tables in the database. It's going to have the same type of setup for the UID. Title string, content string, created at is using that same lambda function. Updated is the exact same. Published is basically the same as active. Here is a foreign key linking the post to the user. The user ID field is going to be a UID coming from the foreign key of the user's user ID. This creates a foreign key lookup. Next, we're defining a few relationships. I don't want to go into this right now because I want to get more on the table. I'm not sure how familiar you all are with databases and relationships. The relationships we're making are one-to-many or many-to-one. We don't have any one-to-ones. Next, we have that author, which is a one-to-many relationship between the author and the posts. So the author can have many posts. How we do this relationship is using this back populates to the posts. A way to understand these relationships is the back populate is like an arrow pointing back, showing how the data flows if it is changed throughout the model. It's a two-way synchronization of the data. One way you can see this is between the user and the posts. The user has a list of posts, but the relationship hinges on those posts having the same author. This author is going to have to line up, and this author's posts are going to have to line up. Now, if you come down here and look at the author, each author is a user, which is the class up here. And the relationship between it is the back population of the posts. The user has a list of posts, so you can see the connections between them right there. Now we'll do the comment connection next. So that one will create a class called comment. This is also going to be a table. We're getting to the non-tables in a second. It's going to be very similar to the other ones. We're going to have the same UID created. Update's going to be the exact same. Then we have a foreign key for that author again, and one more foreign key for the post. We need to be able to link up the comment to not only an author, but also a post specifically. To do that, we'll need to use both of these foreign keys. After those foreign keys, we have the relationships. Again, we're going to use two here. They're both one-to-many. The first one is the one-to-many relationship between the user who can have many comments. A user can have a ton of comments on a single post. We also have another many-to-one relationship between the posts and the comments. Posts can have many comments. And both of these use that back populate. On the other end of this, the post is a list of comments, and it's using the post to back populate to the comments right down here. And then all the way at the top, each author, or I guess user, has a list of comments. Those comments are connected to posts, and also they're connected through their author back down to both posts and comments. If you're a visual learner, this is basically a diagram showing how it all connects. We have the user at the top, post in the middle, and comment on the bottom. I'm going to start with the comment because it's the easiest one to see and it makes the most sense. One author can have many comments. It's literally just the inverse. And these will also be the inverse of each other. It's that bidirectional data flow. But we're not done with these yet. We have some more classes down here in the Pydantic model that we need to handle. We're going to start out with a create user class. If we come down here to the user create class, we're going to start working on that. Again, we're going to have separate classes to do this. As you noticed, our comment, so these are basically our API call ones, and we do not have our password. I forgot to mention that. We do not have our password in these tables. After creating those base classes for the comment, post, and user, we're now going to start creating the classes that do the user creation, post creation, and comment creation. So the major differences between these and the previous classes are they have a few different fields, and also they're a bit more simplistic, and they're also not considered to be tables. So these are just basically Pydantic models. They're inheriting from the SQL model still. For the creating of a user, what you're going to need are both a username, email, a full name, a bio, which is optional, set to none, and then a password, which is stored as a secret string. A post class, which is going to, again, inherit from the SQL model, string title, string, and then published is a Boolean, set to false. And our last one is coming up. We have just a create comment, which takes in just the string of the comment. If you have any questions, just let me know. I have some resources I can share. We're now just going to test it out a little bit and see if everything's working all right. So at the bottom, just do a if name main. We are going to import a few things first and then initialize our database. I didn't want to import this up there because we don't want this running if we're not using them. This will only run when we're actually running it within the file, but won't run when we're using main to run it. Here we have creating our engine, and then from our database class, or from our database file, so this file, that little helper, those helper functions, we're going to import this method. If you're having troubles importing, I would throw a init file. A lot of editors look for that. After you get those imports, we also are going to create our database engine and then create those tables for our database because we need to create them at some point. After creating the tables, now is when we are starting to interact with the database. And like last time, we're going to use with session to contain the session and then automatically close out of it when it leaves the scope of this with. To create a user, the user is made up of a test, email, and full name. Then we're going to add it to the session, submit it, refresh it, and print it. Now you're going to do that 2 more times, one for post and one for comment. The post is going to be made up of a post, which is title, test post, content is, I don't feel like reading that. And then here's when it gets a little bit more interesting. The author ID is going to be using this user. It's going to be grabbing the ID that user generated, that UUID. It's going to be passing it to the author. This author ID draws that relationship between these 2 tables. And then we simply add, commit, refresh. Let's just see it. Yep. If you want it to print out nice and pretty like this, I recently found this package. I guess it's pretty common, but it's called rich and then pretty import pp. You can also do a from rich import print, which will then basically take over your actual print, but I wouldn't recommend doing that in a production database or production code. Someone might get mad at you. Here we are. Those are the user we generated, and this user ID is then going to be passed to the author of the post. And sure enough, it did. You can take a wild guess. These 2 will be passed to the comment. And there we have it. The comment is going to be comprised of basically just a string, but you're going to also need to pass it the user's ID and the post ID that it is associated with. And we're going to add, commit, refresh, and then print it all again. Run it. Yep. We have it all right there. That is it. And if we want to check the database to make sure it actually is getting these, it looks like it is. And let's see. Some of these might be leftovers. Oh yeah, wait, we should stay in comments because it has all of them. We can figure out which ones of these were just recently created by looking at the comment ID, and we're looking for E1. E1 is the one that we just created, and 0 lines up with the user, and post is 1B. Yep, everything's perfect. Now we need to line these up with API endpoints to create the backend for our blog posts application. We're going to be working on the backend, and then we'll move to the front end and do some templating and authentication. We're getting close to being done with this backend. We honestly might just have one more video going over how to combine everything together, add the endpoints into this model. That is it for how to create these SQL models. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I'll see you next time.